Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so honored to have back on the show multi-Grammy award winning and contest winning, you name it. He's done it all. He plays fiddle, guitar, and mandolin. Mark O'Connor, it's great to have you back on the show.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's so funny. We were talking before we started the interview, and last time we had you in the studio, but it's like 2023. This is going to be a very busy, musical and release year for you.
Yes. It is all culminating, to this year, because during the pandemic, we were, off the road, and I just poured my time into some projects. And
right.
Well, one of them was writing my memoir. And that took a couple of years, and I worked very hard on it. Did a lot of research into my own background, which is kind of interesting because I do remember a lot, but I had extensive press articles, and my mother kept incredible scrapbooks. She herself was a wonderful black and white photographer, documenting the entire thing. And so it filled in all the gaps. And I started writing about this really insane childhood as a traveling musician around the country, winning national championships on 3 different instruments, and
right.
being a member of iconic groups like the Dregs, and working with iconic artists like Merle Haggard and Stefan Grappelli, and learning music from the American music legends.
Well, and that's the thing, going through your book, your multiple books, and we're going to talk about all this, Mark, but Crossing Bridges, I think it's such a, an epic tale, and I don't know how you accomplished the book in only 2 years, because there's so much in there, not only covering, your family life, which was not that easy, and your mother moving you and the family here to Nashville, but also, you at one point, you competed in 200 contests and won over 50% of them.
Yeah, it was really unusual. I was really the first child fiddler and guitar player,
right,
entering these competitions in the 1970s. And I was going up against the adults and the professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was back at the heyday of fiddle competitions. Fiddle contests have had a kind of an interesting and kind of glorious past, starting from the 1700s. But I think it's arguable to say that maybe the 1970s was really the peak of the fiddle contest scene, where the prize money was very large. People were traveling around, making their living going to fiddle championships.
Wow.
Which you can't even imagine doing that now,
right,
because the whole scene has kind of been reduced and changed. But I was there at the peak, and it was drawing huge audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to make my way there, and always usually win first, second, or third prizes.
Wow.
That would more than pay for my way there, and I was on the road often by myself doing this.
Well, and what's so amazing to me also, and and you're far too humble about it, but with the fiddle especially, Mark, you helped bring that back into prominence also, to where not only as a country music or a bluegrass instrument, but covering multiple genres of music, just like you brought up with the Dregs, and people really hadn't seen the fiddle in that way. And people like you and obviously, Charlie Daniels also kind of elevated the presence of the fiddle.
Well, yeah, speaking of the Dregs, I was one of a very few electric violin players at that time. I mean, now, every time you see a band with a fiddle on it, they're plugged in and electric, but that was
right.
really unusual for the 70s still. And it was at the very beginning of the Marcus Berry pickup that you would put on the bridge of the fiddle. And I, there was feedback problems, all that stuff I was going through as a teen. But, reviewing this history, I mean, I've done quite a bit as an adult professional musician.
Oh, definitely.
But going back to the childhood, I really actually accomplished a whole lifetime of experiences. And when I set out to initially write about my life story, I was thinking that I was going to continue through my 30s and 40s and 50s and you know, get into some recent stuff. And it was just such rich content back then, mainly with the characters I was hanging out with. You know?
My gosh, totally. Just like, you know, your time, you know, what I love, you know, and once again, you know, you and I both being, you know, musician nuts and also music gear nuts, but, you know, your time with Roy Acuff and people like that, you know, a lot of these, you know, legends that you were playing with and a part of are no longer with us, Mark.
Of course, yeah. And they were such huge fans of the fiddle. And then when I came along being able to play like I did as a 12-year-old, I mean, it just fascinated them. They had never seen anything like that. And remember, if you can, for those of you old enough to know what the 1970s was like, it was very rare to see a child musician that on a professional level in bluegrass and fiddle music or jazz, any of it. Right. It was really, fiddling was an old timers game. I mean, you know, people that won fiddle championships had long gray beards, you know, and then here's like a whippersnapper coming along. I mean, I was mentored by the greatest. I mean, Benny Thomason, I talk about in the book, my memoir, Crossing Bridges, about not just getting lessons from him, but all day long lessons. And the lessons would last all day Saturday into the night. And then by my second year with him, we would be staying overnight in my old station, in my family's station wagon, 1959 Chevy station wagon. My mom, my sister, and I would sleep in the back. And my lessons would resume with him in his trailer house at that time in southern Washington State. He had gone up there to retire. So this Texas fiddle legend was literally 2.5 hours from our house. So we would drive to him. And so, I mean, by the time I, you know, experienced all that, I was playing with professional musicians and had this incredible experience and knowledge from the master, Benny Thomason.
Well, you know, and you've done so much with it also. You know, Mark, you certainly haven't sat on your laurels, and with the Crossing Bridges, which I think, you know, it's going to have to be, you know, when you take the rest of your life and put it into book, it's going to have to be Crossing More Bridges and do the second section. But also you've got, you know, the CD out that kind of covers your early contest and memories. And plus, as we talked about earlier, the memories book that you compiled from your mother's photographs, which I love black and white photography. And she was such an incredible, you know, photographer and, you know, dance instructor and everything. But I mean, those are 3 great things to release within 1 year.
Well, you know, when I got done with the memoir and I sent it to my editor and proofreader, and I was, you know, that took a few months, and I was just waiting, and I was thinking, you know, I should go ahead and look at these pictures that I've been researching for the last couple of years to write the memoir. I should release these too, because my mother's black and white photography, you know, for those that got to know her, she died years ago, back in 1982. Actually, she died right after my childhood story ends in the memoir. And she was rarely seen without her late model's 1950s Nikon camera around her neck. She was taking pictures, not just of her kids, but a lot of the musicians that I was around, learning from and playing with. So there's incredible photos that she's got. You know, I've enjoyed them in my scrapbooks all through the years. And now, you know, friends and fans and colleagues can check these out. A lot of people are featured in the book.
You know, I was thinking too, going through, you know, both books and you know, with the CD releasing as well, to where it's like you and Maggie are almost going to have to do like a memories tour eventually, to where you have these images that your mom shot, you know, on a backdrop behind you, and being able to, you know, play the songs and tell some of the stories with that, Mark.
Well, we're actually scheduling Crossing Bridges appearances, and we'll play some music, and I've got some music. By the way, these instruments behind me, most all of them are from my childhood, and I write about these instruments in the book. I'm just looking at them on the screen here. Like, this is my old 1945 Herringbone Martin guitar that I got when I was 14. Also, the Gibson Mandocello I got when I was 14.
Love that.
This guitar right behind me here was my first good guitar when I was 8 years old. So speaking of the CD, the companion CD, which is early childhood recordings, it starts when I'm age 10, playing that guitar, singing a Johnny Cash song.
Wow.
And then the next cut is I'm 10, competing in a classical guitar competition against all adults playing flamenco music on that guitar and winning the competition at the University of Washington. And that was before I even picked up the fiddle. This fiddle right here, I played when I was 12. That was my first good fiddle. That was the one that I debuted on the Grand Ole Opry with Roy Acuff. I recorded my first album. The mandolin right here was my first win in a bluegrass competition. It was the grand prize. And it really, opened the doors to this whole world of old time and, bluegrass music and folk music that I just took on with a passion. And so
it's like a museum, an instrument museum behind you that kind of tells your life, and is obviously in the book Crossing Bridges too, Mark.
Yeah, and the CD goes all the way through my teen years. So there's excerpts with the Dregs, with Grappelli, with David Grisman Quintet. The time I sat in with Joe Venuti was on tape, the father of jazz violin, and on and on. I mean, me performing with Jim and Jesse and the Virginia Boys. I was actually a Virginia boy for a while at age 13. They took me on. So there's going to be things that are familiar to some of my fans in this book, but there's going to be some things that people may have never known or maybe have forgotten over the years that I was a part of.
What I like about all three of these too, Mark, with the two books and with the CD, is that they all interlock. You know what I mean? They all share different points and different perspectives that support, your rise within the music. And I got to bring this up too. You've also got a brand new album coming out with Maggie, your wife, Life After Life, that is also releasing this year.
Yeah, this was the other big project I accomplished during the pandemic years. Produced an album of mostly all original songs I've written, Maggie singing the lead and I'm singing harmonies. And we actually cut it in Nashville wearing masks back during the pandemic for a couple of days. And then we came back home to Charlotte, North Carolina, where we live. And I worked on it here for months, and really, really excited about this release. We're going to work with a record company out of Nashville in association with my indie company, OMAC Records.
Right.
And so, yeah, a lot of things coming out. Maggie is such a terrific artist. I mean, an incredible fiddler and singer, and just a talent that I'm so excited about, continuing to introduce to the public. And this is going to really showcase her talent, this album.
Well, the last time, we had your entire, your family in studio and everything, and you and Maggie and all that. And I've got to bring up, no conversation with you would be complete without also talking about, you've got 2 string camps this year, in your spare time. And then also, you have perpetuated the O'Connor method, which a lot of students and teachers have embraced, as opposed to the Suzuki method, Mark.
Yeah, I released this about 12 years ago, and it really kind of made a big impact on the world of violin and string education. The buzzwords I was using when I released it, really put people on edge in this world. I constantly talked about American music, which was completely overlooked in violin education. It was all European based. Still, up until literally 10 years ago, when I released my method, I talked about the diversity of the music, and especially music on the violin and fiddle from African American cultures. Which is so important and a bedrock of of all-American music, and the fiddle, which cannot be overlooked. Or, I mean, maybe it was for a long time, and but that all obviously needs to change, especially if strings are being taught to children, and especially in schools, in public schools, or any kind of studio where there's a lot of children involved. You've got to talk about a diversity of the music and make sure that it's inclusive. And another buzzword I was coming out with was creativity. What happened to the creativity of the violinist? It's not just all written on the page. I mean, I have a lot of music I've written, and I've written it on the page, but that's part of the story. Like, we have forgotten about improvisation and writing your own music as violin players in classical music. So this whole thing started a big conversation. A lot of people got their feathers all ruffled up because, granted, they've been training in an approach for years, sometimes decades, that left all this stuff out, and now they feel like, wait a minute, was I hoodwinked? And so it's going to take a generation to really kind of bring a lot of these ideas into the fold, but it's already happening in record speed, really.
Well, and I think the root of it too, Mark, and once again, I know you and I both feel the same way, but it's like to bring more children, especially, into studying music, into being a part of the instruments, it has to be inclusive, and they have to see progress and see how it relates to them. And particularly, with the fiddle and with all instruments, you want more kids, you want more people being involved in it, because I mean, it's so uplifting to play music and be a part of it. And so I'm thrilled with your method that has gained ground and is bringing more children into this, and more teachers are seeing the benefit of it.
Yeah, I've got a book right back there. I was seeing it in the screen. Yeah, we're doing the string camps in North Carolina. One is for students, and the other one is for teachers. And they can find all about that at my website, markoconnor.com, including there's a whole page about the Crossing Bridges memoir and everything. That's the central location to find out all things O'Connor, I suppose.
Well, and I love keeping up with you and Maggie on social media too. I kind of feel like it's like a Where's Waldo of musical travels. It's, because you both are just constantly on tour. And I love the new book, Crossing Bridges, which is available now. I know you're going to have some book signings and everything also. And also for your, photography book with your mother's photographs and everything, the new CD, you're going to have another album releasing, Life After Life. So many great things going, the string camps, tours. Mark O'Connor, tell you what, it's always great to have you on the show. I feel like we need more time.
Well, thank you for having me. And we are looking forward to a big week in Nashville at the release, where we decided to be in Nashville for the release of the book and all these 3 releases, February 10th. So it's going to kick off with my Grand Ole Opry appearance, marking a 50th anniversary of my first appearance that I write about in the memoir when I was 12 years old, of being on the Grand Ole Opry and Roy Acuff putting me on. And so I'm going to probably reprise the 2 tunes that I played when I was 12. Wow. One of them is a fiddle tune, and another one is called Faded Love, the old classic. And then Maggie and I are going to create a Crossing Bridges appearance at Franklin Theater, just south of Nashville there, on February 13th. I'll also do a presentation at the Country Music Hall of Fame on the 12th. So we're going to have a big week in Nashville about the release of my memoir.
I'll tell you what, it's such an incredible book, both books and the CD. And I can't wait to hear Life After Life also. But it's like, as a person that grew up seeing you bring fiddle back into mainstream music during the 70s and 80s, it's so great to see you still, after 50 years, once again, headed to the Opry again. And I know you're always welcome there. It's just incredible what you continue to accomplish, Mark. And thank you for coming on the show, Mark O'Connor. Can't wait to have my own hard copies of both books and the CD. And I think it's going to be a great year for you and Maggie.
Thank you so much. You're going to be able to get these books, through Amazon, and you can order the books through your favorite bookstore. For the ebooks, the electronic version, Ingram Publishing, and then you can go to my website and get all the links to all that stuff.
And enjoy the great photos too that your mother had taken.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And it's great tribute to her. I dedicate these books to her.
Yeah.
And she was right there. I wish she could still be around. But part of my story is a personal story about my relationship with my mother, and all during my childhood, her dying of cancer and us dealing with that. A lot of things that were kind of brushed under the rug, I'm able to talk about in this book, and how I dealt with those adversities and dreamed of being the musical artist that I envisioned. And so it's about overcoming all these crazy obstacles and keeping music as the focus.
And you continue to achieve it. Mark O'Connor, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.